one louder, the sound engineer formerly known as Scott, and welcome to the Electric Sex Machine. Yeah, I know, shut up and play the guitar already. But first, I'd like to address some criticism aimed at both Matt and Chris at Texas Toast and myself during and after the Great Guitar Build-Off 2020 about the guitar dubbed the Hater Maker. Some of the less profane comments labelled it as ungiggable, a wall hanger, and a mere collector's item. Well, as Shakespeare said, there are more things in heaven and on earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Please allow me to explain why I think these comments are ill-informed. The earliest examples appeared circa 1690, crafted by renowned instrument maker Alexander Verbome, with the professional musician in mind for use in ensembles and orchestras. The harper lyre appeared in 1830, and although previously created in small numbers, by the 1890s double-necked instruments began to reflect modern tastes and trends, resulting in the proliferation of harp guitars. This 1916 example with its 10-string harp is believed to be the last built by Orville Gibson before his death in 1918. Hawaiian music was all the rage in the 20s, and vaudeville performer Jack Pennywell, billed as the world's greatest guitar player, played a stellar double neck prior to commissioning Gibson to make their first double neck guitar in 1932. His patented Twin 6 weighed 7.5 pounds, had no frets, used only paint markers, and tuned to open G and D. It was purely intended for slide usage. Here it is in an excerpt of Hen House Blues. Post-World War II, the next advances came from Paul Bigsby, who built a guitar for Nashville legend Grady Martin, and Mosrite founder Sammy Mosley, aided by Joe Maphis and his 9-year-old protege Larry Collins of the Collins Kids. These versatile electric multi-necks offered octave and mandolin necks as options for the player. Collins would become a rockabilly icon and lifelong devotee of the multi-neck. In 1958, Gibson released the EMS 1235, followed by the EDS 1275 and the EBS 1250, a guitar fit for the king himself. Dan Electro followed suit, as did Gretsch, but the appeal of the multi-neck lay primarily with country players such as young Ricky Nelson, Jimmy Bryant, Sherwin Linden and Junior Brown, although they did attract the attention of surf guitarist Jimmy Luttrell. Blues legend Earl Hooker was an early adopter, using an EDS 1275 exclusively. B.B. King joked about Lucille having a baby, and psychedelic rock guitarist Johnny Eccles explored new boundaries with his Stratosphere Twin. The 60s would see an explosion of makers and designs in the USA. But in Europe, US-built guitars were a rarity, and European makers such as Egmont, Framus, Hofner and Vox filled the void. Even the Eastern Bloc joined in, as did the forgotten Southern Hemisphere in New Zealand and Australia. The late 60s saw the emergence of the supergroups. Enter one Jimmy Page with his now familiar Gibson EDS 1275, and along with John Paul Jones, it's hard to imagine a Led Zeppelin show without a double neck or two. As it was with prog rockers Yes, with Steve Howe and Chris Squire's wall bass, Emerson Lake and Palmer's Greg Lake, and John Lodge of the Moody Blues. Then there was Mike Rutherford from Genesis, and his ingenious collaboration with Shergold guitars, which saw the birth of the modular double neck, which could morph back into a more conventional guitar. These were embraced by fellow early Genesis guitarist Steve Hackett and players such as Lee Pomeroy. An Eagles show without Hotel California and Don Felder or his latter-day replacement Stuart Smith using a double neck is unthinkable. Pete Townshend had dispensed with his fragile Rickenbackers and was adamant he wouldn't get fooled again, and was happily windmilling on an EDS 1275 also. The arrival of jazz fusion saw former Miles Davis sideman John McLaughlin wield his scalloped fretboard double necks for 2 hours at a time with the Mahavishnu Orchestra. His Eastern influences would lead to the genesis of the Shakti guitar, complete with drone strings which sat diagonally across the sound hole. Although not a multi-neck, it owed much to its design ethos and would inspire Pat Metheny's explorations and builds such as the Picasso guitar. Jan Ackerman embraced the hocus pocus of the double neck guitar, as did Al Di Meola. Alex Lifeson and Geddy Lee from legendary Canadian band Rush both used double necks extensively. The 80s was the era of the guitar hero, and it would be shredded by the innovation and wizardry of Eddie Van Halen. Joe Satriani and Steve Vai would also sweep audiences away with the aid of 2 and 3 guitar necks, whilst Billy Sheehan and Randy Coven did likewise on bass. Whether you were 8 miles high, rode like the wind, had wings to fly like an eagle, or had big love on your radar, whether you were God himself or merely God's guitarist, deadhead or champion, it was about rock and roll, from hard to heavy, glam to punk, and grunge to rage. It was about dancing, from the Tennessee Waltz to the Last Waltz, and the extraordinary redneck jazz of Danny Gatton. From Bonamassa to Yngwie and all points between, legendary players, guitar heroes, Hall of Famers and playlist favourites alike had a twin-neck guitar in their arsenal. It was about fun and showmanship too. I can't think of a Cheap Trick show without Rick Nielsen's 2, 3, 4, 5 and impossible 9-neck guitar antics. Guitarists had become modern-day gunslingers, and multi-necks were wanted dead or alive. They were the ideal family guitar, perfect for audience participation as well, a chance for a Kodak moment, though some were afraid to admit to it publicly. Women who rocked weren't afraid to rock them either. Metal guys detuned and wielded them. With too much metal for one hand, they embraced the multi-headed beast in ritual sacrificial offerings before their devoted followers in stadiums and fields everywhere. session legends loved them too. From jazz to the experimental, no matter what kind of hat you wore. It was slash and burn with passion, shred and technique. From tappers Ballawhaine, Felix Martin and Gordon Giltrap, and Bumblefoot and the ambidextrously confronting Michael Antonio Bartio. We saw the return to the romanticism of the classical and the instrument's origin itself. Somehow, the song remained the same, but had improved with age. At first glance, the multi-neck is always seen as a novelty. After all, it looks far from conventional. But versatility is its key, as was its original intention, particularly since the advent of multi-track recording, layers and complex multiple parts. There is no other way to render these performances to an audience live than to use a multi-neck to recreate them. No longer shall the multi-neck guitar be the butt of jokes. I've documented over 200 eminent players, some represented here, who dared to use one. It survived the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune for 3 centuries. Maybe it's time for one in your collection. If you made it to the end, thanks for watching. Please click like and subscribe. I've created a playlist primer as an accompaniment which will allow those interested to visit the earlier and more obscure members of the family tree. Please feel free to drop me a line, leave a comment, and I'll see you soon for more multi-neck madness.